Something weird is going on. Welcome to the sanctuary. I'm Kyle, and I'm here to tell you, never be afraid to step into the pleasure den of the absurd. It's Something Weird Sunday. And we've got two hot topic movies to talk about today. And to give you a little history on certain things that have been going on for a long time. I want to talk about this film here, The Devil's Joint, which has pretty interesting ad art here. This is believed to have come out in 1969. I'm going to read the back of the box. Some words written by John Harrison, the Graveyard Tramp. It says, not a lot is known about this exploitation clip collage, which examines the classic marijuana scare films of the 1920s through the 1940s. However, the year of release, the tone of narration, and the complete lack of credits indicate that The Devil's Joint may well have been some kind of underground film. After all, it was released around the time when vintage drug films like the 1936 Reefer Madness were being rediscovered by a new generation via midnight screenings at smoke-filled theaters and college universities. Now, a lot of the arguments made against marijuana in particular have been going on since this time, from the 1920s. And these films, the way David F. Friedman put it, back then, Dow Chemical Company lobbied Congress to outlaw hemp and its many uses by linking it to, marijuana, the devil's weed, and so therefore all of these propaganda films were made. And Dave Friedman, being a young kid at that time, said that, yeah, people believe this stuff. So again, from the back of the box, the narrator also takes the time to alert us to, quote, the big lie, end quote. Those moments in drug scare films where blatantly fabricated case studies and incidents are presented to us as authentic facts in an attempt to instill fear in the viewer. One specific example shown here is the hilarious sequence from Reefer Madness, where the high school principal calmly discusses the case of the youth who, high on pot, butchered his entire family with an axe. It just says here, predating Ron Mann's Grass from 1996 by some 30 years, The Devil's Joint should be considered not just a rousing party film, but an important document of a period when our views on marijuana use, as well as our perception of social behavior films, and the misguidance they preached, was changing almost as rapidly as society itself. Something Weird video, the release of The Devil's Joint. Again, this is not just movie history, but American history. And this is what part of the reason what makes Something Weird Video the greatest home video company that ever existed. Next up, this film, The Narcotic Story. Oh boy, wait till you hear about this. Okay, again, reading from the back of the box. From notes written again by John Harrison, the Graveyard Tramp. The Narcotic Stories from 1958, in color, directed by Robert W. Larson, with Herbert Crisp, Darlene Hendricks, Patricia Lynn, and Officer Joe DiIro. And it says here, fans of vintage educational shorts will no doubt enjoy this feature produced by a company called Police Science, which combines elements of the juvenile delinquency and classroom scare genres and presents them in the manner of a police training film. Sternly narrated by Art Gilmore and re-released in 1962 as The Dread Persuasion, the narcotic story chronicles the life of Joyce, a former hype, classic drug slang for a user, and her descent into the living death that is heroin addiction. Now, we're certainly not belittling the dangers of heroin addiction. We're just telling you what's in this movie and how it's presented as such. And so, it says here, we first meet Joyce as a regular high school gal who likes to dance at the local malt shop until mom and dad start leaving her home alone too often and boredom and bad habits start to sink in. Rapidly developing a taste for cigarettes and booze, it isn't long before Joyce is dating wild teens, downing barbiturates at raucous parties, and allowing her boyfriend to take advantage of her on the couch. Quote, a goofball has won a friend, end quote, Mr. Gilmore tells us, before laying down all the statistics, such as 75% of crime is motivated by drugs, and showing us a poor woman sprawled out in a dark alleyway, mugged for precious goofball money. So, this film does play much like a training film for police, and it has these actors doing their scenes and whatnot. There's really no dialogue spoken. It's all narrated by Art Gilmore, who's explaining the scene, and basically like if a policeman enters the room, he notices this, he notices that, the ashtray and this, and again, it's all for the policeman's benefit, or people of such authority to know, to get a good idea of what's going on just by observing the environment. But at the same time, it can be kind of hyperbolic and a little extreme, but it is there is some truth to it for sure, and it does basically try to tell this story, and quite frankly, I'm not quite sure just to whose benefit this would be for, but such films were made and shown to the public, even though this may have seemed to be strictly as an academic film for police training. It is watchable, and it certainly is an enlightening watch for sure. So as such, Joyce goes through her progression, and they show all the various, criminal elements that are involved, and the type of people they are, and all these people in the throes of either the being in the criminal network or affected people by the dope that they're peddling and stuff like that. So it tells her story, and it can be kind of extreme at times, and that's the point really that they're trying to get across. But it just says here, naturally, with so many police personnel listed in the opening credits, the cops eventually bust the local drug operation, but not before we witness a female junkie suffering horrendous withdrawal symptoms, and not before Joyce starts bringing strange men to cheap hotels in order to pay for her pleasure. Quote, the addict will sell all possessions, and finally, herself, in her drive for drugs. With its amalgamation of cheap and nasty exploitation, the extended scenes of police procedures, i.e., the steps to successfully arresting a trio of bent teenagers, and all the cunning spots which dealers use to hide their stash, the narcotic story both entertains and informs the hype in all of us. It's an interesting watch for sure if you want to see an old-timey pseudo-documentary training type of film. Again, 2 historical films for your edification and enjoyment. Perhaps you can find them streaming, or perhaps you'll be lucky enough to find them on DVD, such as they are. And with that, I want to thank you for watching. If you like this video, please click the like button. And if you really like what we do, is just set the camera down, hold stuff up and talk about it, and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you click all notifications so you always know when a new video drops. And with that, again, I want to thank you for watching, and never be afraid to step into the pleasure den of the absurd.